Hi, welcome back to China Manufacturing Decoded from the Sofeast Group. It's episode 170 today. We're at the end of June 2023, and it's Adrian here from the team, joined this time by Andrew, also from the team, new product development and reliability guru.
Hey Adrian, good to be here. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Nice to have you back on. And I'm looking forward to getting a bit of your experience today because we're talking about 10 of the key factors that impact the cost of your product design when you're making electronics. You know, this is something that we are actively doing for a number of our clients who are trying to bring new electronic products to market with us, and indeed something that you're working on, you know, as part of your normal day as well. So I'm quite looking forward to hearing what you've got to say, and I'm sure many of the listeners are as well.
Well, thank you, Adrian. I totally agree. I think that, well, right now with the current geopolitical situation, with what's happening with the economics of the whole world, I think that there's a little bit of awareness about cost and impact of the cost in product development as well as manufacturing. I think the recession has caused people to be more cautious in all levels of all aspects of our lives. And whether you're going to a gas station to pump gas, or you go into a restaurant or anything, you're kind of like worried and kind of cost conscious in terms of how much you're going to spend. And I think it's fair to say that our customers who are interested in bringing a new product to market, like you mentioned, and or manufacturing of a new product, it's very important to keep that cost in mind. And what we're going to talk about today are 10 points to be made, or 10 key factors that whoever is working on building a product need to keep that in mind in terms of designing a product, so that hopefully these 10 key elements will help them have a better cost effective solution in terms of reduced cost or balanced cost.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody is aware of the post-COVID economic wobbles that all the countries are having at the moment. China, Europe, the States, you name it. Nobody's not being affected by, rising costs and difficulties like that. So when we are trying to bring a new product to market, trying to control costs while we're doing so, it's a good topic. It's an important topic. So with that in mind, then, let's go through those 10 factors that you've mentioned, Andrew. What's number one?
Yeah, that sounds good. Let's get started. I think, in my opinion, when you are designing a brand new product, the first thing you have in mind is, okay, what kind of components I'm going to use and where I'm going to find these components. Where should I source it? What about the quality of those components? But more importantly, you'll be focusing on what are the costs in terms of, number of components you need. And I think that one of the most important thing on component selection to keep in mind, you got cost, but you also need to have performance and quality. And in terms of that, which one is the most important to your design is what you should keep in mind. So, okay, if the cost is the only thing, quality doesn't matter as long as it's marginal, or good quality is good enough. And as long as it performs within tolerance limit of performance is good enough, then maybe cost is the most important. So, you could go with a very, let's say, lower cost component. However, generally speaking, the lower the cost, most likely equals lower quality and lower performance. So you have a very high performance device, and you need to make sure that it meets certain performance requirements, certain quality and reliability requirements. You might be careful on lowering the cost, since it might impact quality and performance.
Interesting. And yeah, you got to walk that tightrope between cutting the costs too much on components and then ending up with something that's not going to be suitable for your products. I mean, let's think of a quality product. It's easy to say Apple, isn't it? You can bet they're not using cheap camera sensors, for example, in the iPhone.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. That's a very good example. So then we could move on to the next item that I think is also equally important, and that's manufacturing processes. If you have a very complex product or complicated manufacturing process, it is definitely going to impact the cost, because when you're manufacturing and you got a lot of components to put together in order to put for example, PCBA together, it's going to take longer time. It's going to take more manpower and labor. It's going to take more power, for example. It's going to take longer time in general. And in fact, it might even affect the yields in terms of reliability. And so all of these really, all in all, impacts the cost. And I think to be able to overcome this, it's very, very important to have a very simple design that has been optimized for better manufacturing, and use all the best in class manufacturing processes, including what we call DFM, design for manufacturability. And then all of these put together, hopefully your manufacturing costs will be lower.
What other sort of best in class processes might we be using? You've mentioned DFM.
Oh yeah, I think that another one that will be good for manufacturing is ORT, ongoing reliability testing. And that's
Mhm.
really one of the most important tests that you could do after the, let's say, first 30 days of run. First 30 days run, there's going to be a lot of issues and may not be necessarily related to, let's say, reliability. It might be just completely manufacturing issues. But it is very important. You can either run right along, right from the beginning. As soon as you start manufacturing, you do sample runs of ORT right away, or you can wait and do it, for example, monthly or quarterly and so on. I think that's one of the best processes you can definitely put in manufacturing, in addition to simplifying the design and number of components and so
I could have guessed you would have chosen something to do with reliability.
on.
Okay, we're moving on to the third at this point then. So we are going through these. There's 10, remember. The third one, kind of similar to component selection, material selection.
Yeah, material selection actually is not exactly component selection. A lot of people make that mistake. Material selection has to do with plastics, sheet metals, aluminum, glass.
Yeah,
So whereas components is more of diodes, capacitors, resistors, ICs, and so on. So
sure.
each have their own way of dealing with the suppliers, and material selection is really, really important, especially in the geoeconomical conditions where some of
Mm.
these materials they may be short and not available, and the lead times may be a lot more longer, and so if you've got very exotic product that uses many different types of materials, uh, you could definitely end up paying more for the fact that you have so many different kinds of materials. And of course, if you got a lot of it, a lot of those materials, then of course the cost is going to be even more expensive. So I think, when the designers are actually designing a product, they should be mindful of some trade-offs between material and cost and performance and quality, and need to understand, okay, which one is the most important, and can I use, for example, plastic instead of metal? Can I use acrylic plastic that looks just like glass instead of glass, which is more expensive? So you have to be thinking about these things as a designer, and hopefully it will definitely impact and lower the cost of your product.
Sure, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
So the next item that I think that is also important is assembly cost and labor cost. Well, assembling and labor are go together because most of the time assemblers are people actually assembling your product. Now, if you've got a product that has many, many parts, obviously you're going to need more people to assemble, right? That's just simple to understand. So, what you might want to do is make sure you have a design that has a lower number of parts count, as well as simple to assemble process so that, assemblers don't actually spend a lot of time trying to put it together. And then, of course, if you don't put a lot of time into assembling, then one assembler can actually assemble a number of points in the process, not just
Oh,
take, for example, 10 or 15 seconds to do just one task. Instead, one assembler will take, 10 or 15 seconds, but it'll do like five tasks, 5 seconds for each task, push this button, move this over here, quick starter here, and so on. And boom, it's ready to go move to the next person. So that's really what you need. You need a process that is simplified, optimized, and doesn't need a whole lot of people to do for assembling the process. I mean, this is really, really important.
I think if we visualize, the assembly line with the different operators, the members of staff sitting in, say, a line, and they're passing the product from one station to the next, and that one person, as you say, if they're just doing one thing, so they are screwing in one screw and then passing
Right,
it on to the next person, by
right,
definition, that's less efficient than if they can quickly do a few screws or click something into place as well, and then pass it on to their colleague. And it's going to require fewer people as well. So that's less in terms of cost. And the design using fewer parts that need to be, touched by a person working on it, as you mentioned as well. That's a good one, I think, because you've got fewer parts going into the product. So that's less cost. And then the product's going to be easier and faster to make with maybe with fewer staff. So that reduces the cost as well. So yeah, I can see how the assembly and the labor that could add up very, very quickly if you have complex designs.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's other things that we should mention here to our listeners that other processes such as Pokeoki and automation and simplifying the timing or time balancing of the line. They call it line balancing, actually. It's the same thing as time
Mm.
balancing. So you doing all of these all together and for example, quality inspection in the line, all of these definitely helps lower the assembly cost. One thing alone is not enough, unfortunately, because there are so many variables and reasons why assembly process can go wrong and then costs can just, overlap. So it's very, very important to have multiple processes that control the assembly process to make sure that the costs keep low.
Yeah, and I suppose this is where working with a competent manufacturer really comes into it because we've spoken before. I'm pretty sure you were saying, process engineers are kind of worth their weight in gold because they can yield so many benefits through the work that they do. And so, yeah, you do make that point there. And if you're listening and thinking, well, how do I know if my manufacturer is competent? I mean, that's a whole nother podcast, isn't it? But we do have plenty of content about that. So I'll leave some links in the show notes, and yeah, maybe we'll cover that in future, Andrew, as well. So yeah, that's a good one. Halfway through number 5.
Yeah, number five is size and weight of the product. So when you're about to design a product, it's very, very important to really get together with the team and decide, how big do we want this product? And there are a lot of reasons why you need to do that. It's not just cost. Maybe the product you want it to be small because you want the cost to be low, but then maybe use case is wrong. You can't use it in the field with such a small product. So you see, there has to be a balance, where the customers like the size and weight, the environment where they're gonna actually use this product is appropriate for this kind of a size and weight. And then when it comes to cost, you want to make sure that, if certain size is not necessary and doesn't have to be that big, doesn't have to be that heavy, then you can cut costs in those areas. Maybe you can make it a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter, and all of these affect the manufacturing process costs and materials and material costs and everything else. So, all in all, you need to keep aware and be aware of the size and weight of the product that you're about to design.
Oh, we are talking about a relatively early stage in the new product development process here. We're still talking about product design, right? So
Right.
I assume that a lot of people who are at this point will have hopefully done market research and got feedback from potential customers, the sort of customers in the niche that you're looking for, at least, on what a relevant size or weight of the product is going to be. If it's clearly too large and cumbersome, that's negative. But on the other hand, as you say, if it's too small to be used effectively for the use cases that they're most likely to be having, again, that's going to be a problem. So that's going to definitely influence the size and weight of the product before you even start thinking about, well, okay, what about my shipping costs, for example, if it's going to be smaller, because ultimately you're going to have a limit on how small or large you can go.
Exactly. And as you mentioned, it impacts everything. Cost impacts everything. So if you got a heavy weight and a big size product, the shipping is going to be expensive. You're going to need a bigger warehouse to house all these big size products. So, everything gets affected by size, weight, and cost. And you need to be aware of that. Absolutely.
Your packaging too. Well, that's
Your
going to
package,
need to
yes.
be, it's going to need to be sturdier, probably of a higher quality for heavier
Right.
products to make sure that they don't get damaged during storage and shipping as well. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right with that one. Absolutely. Okay.
Yep. Okay, so then next item is energy efficiency. I think we're living in an environment nowadays, in a world that everyone is talking about clean environment, a better ecosystem where your air quality is better, and we're doing recycling. So all of these things really comes down to how can we design a product that is energy efficient. And this is really a big topic nowadays in just about every company, because as soon as the product becomes not energy efficient, you're not only impacting the environment, but also you're probably impacting the cost of the overall product.
And I would add, Andrew, as well, because you're mentioning, factors that affect climate change, for example, which is really important for today's business in terms of legislation that's coming in that we've written and spoken about loads of times, but also for consumers. But also, I think it's the cost to run for consumers. That's so important these days.
Absolutely. There are a lot of regulatory, let's say, laws are impacting energy efficiency, as you mentioned. And it's really, really important to keep those in mind when you're designing a new product. You don't want to get caught by surprise when you're about to launch a product and then you're not meeting certain energy efficiency requirements for a particular market.
Yeah, and I think you're going to be obsolete compared to your competitors as well if you're not careful. Because if you bring out a new product that's not particularly energy efficient, you're probably swimming in a pool where most of the competitors are coming out specifically with energy efficient products these days, especially when we talk about electronics, right? Because there's such a drive to be selling products that cost less. I don't think it's as severe in the US, but in Europe for sure, I can attest to this because I'm there. Everything now is focusing so much on energy efficiency. Everybody wants to have something that costs the least, kilowatt hours, and it's more efficient than an oven. So people are turning to air fryers and microwaves and things like that. And people are really scrutinizing the energy efficiency ratings. So I can really see why designing for a lower cost in terms of the energy used by a product For sure. It's going to have a big say in how consumers are going to take that product. And that's as well as the whole climate change factor as well, which is huge these days.
Yeah, totally agree with you on that obsolescence factor because of the fact that the world is changing, our consumers are changing, and sometimes consumers react in a way that we, as a manufacturer, we just never ever expect. Here it is, you're building a product, it's taking you, anywhere from 6 months to a year, and within a year there's a shift in either economy or politics of the world, and next thing you know, you can't sell a thing, and
Yeah.
you're pretty much obsolete, and your competitors they kind of guessed it right, and they're way ahead and you're way behind, and that's the end of it. So yeah,
Mm.
I totally agree with you. I think that's very important to keep that in mind.
Number seven, you have already mentioned DFM, but we're going to specifically cover it now.
Yeah, I think the design for manufacturability is one of the key factors. A lot of people might think that, well, how are we going to do that? I mean, there's a lot of thing goes into design for manufacturability, which we just talked about some of it. How can you make sure that your product has lower number of parts, easy to assemble, easy to manufacture, and a whole bunch of other, components are quality components from quality suppliers. Design itself is sound so that you don't have an accidental short at the pick and placement of the components. The soldering and just the overall testing is seamless and easy and takes less time, less power, more efficient. So all of these things goes into design for manufacturability, and it really takes a great team with a team lead that is experienced in design for manufacturability to kind of align everyone within the team, not only on the development and design team, but also in manufacturing team, to make sure everyone understands what the goals are, what the objectives are, and how are you going to about how are you going about to achieve these goals, within the target set.
Mm. And listeners listening at the moment might be thinking, okay, design for manufacturability, I get why that's going to be important, but this is something that the manufacturer probably, again, you're looking for a capable manufacturer that is going to be considering this as a standard for them. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So and you always mention when you talk about DFM, it's a multi-team sort of discipline, and you need people who are experienced in it who can really manage it and push it forward. We have done good videos on this actually. You've been in some videos that we've got on our YouTube channel, so I'll leave some links to it, and you can read more about DFM and understand what goes into it. I mean, it's not a simple it's not a simple thing, but a lot of these things that we talk about, they never are. But absolutely, it's a good one to mention at this point.
Yeah, and I think you made a really good point. The fact that manufacturing is not something that you learn in one day. It's something that you learn every day, something new. And most good manufacturers have a very streamlined process, like we do in our manufacturing. We have checklists, check sheet, and control systems put in place, and so the whole thing needs to be monitored and controlled constantly, and then keep in mind all the design for manufacturability elements and work together with the team seamlessly to make sure that this works at the end. The next item that we could talk about is testing quality, and I also call it reliability testing. I think
Hmm.
there are several ways of testing the product, right? So one of the most important one I think is just diagnostic test. Uh, every product should have a way of testing itself by software. At least, let the user know it's a go, no go, what area is actually working, what area is not working. So a small diagnose really is helpful for the hardware design team. So, and then when the hardware design team comes together and they need to have another testing capability. So there's engineering tests that actually evaluates whether or not there are current measures and the voltage measures are meeting their specifications, and or when it comes to output of a certain component that needs to meet the certain specification and so on. So those engineering tests are critical as well. But then
Mm.
product level reliability tests are crucial to get very valuable data to the design team in terms of, okay, I did the great design, but will it actually survive in the hands of the main user, in the field? And
Mm.
and for that reason, it's very important that you have a very well done test plan that actually takes into account all the worst case scenarios that could happen in the field for the product in terms of use case. And one other important thing is quality and quality inspection and quality testing. I think that we underestimate the importance of quality inspection either during the production line or even during the design and development. It's very important that quality engineers talking and you listen for all the important inspection point that they make. And all of those need to be put into the design in terms of tolerances and gaps and measurements analysis. So all of these are important. And if you don't do all these types of testing properly, you're most likely going to be surprised with the heavy costs associated with either one of these or all. And so I think it's, very important. For example, by doing these, you could actually reduce the repair cost, return cost. Your product will be more reliable and therefore you'll have higher customer satisfaction. And then most likely because you'll have a better product, better quality, better reliability, you'll have more sales and more customer satisfaction.
Yeah, the costs of poor quality and reliability are not to be taken lightly. And at first, we're talking about doing the testing and working with the engineers to look at the results and this sort of stuff. And eventually, you did mention, well, why do we do it? Because of the risk of these costs. And I mean, product returns. It's just a nightmare if it starts happening en masse, isn't it?
Exactly, totally. I mean, we've discussed this before.
Yeah.
If you end up having product returns and you don't know how to handle it, it could just be like an avalanche. I mean, it'll be one today, tomorrow 10, next thing you know, 100. And then the customer dissatisfaction these days is not the same as the old days. The bad reviews will kill a company very quickly. So it's very, very important to keep all of these in mind while designing.
Very good point there about the reviews. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So then the ninth item is regulatory compliance. And compliance is one of the things that a lot of companies, or let's say customers that are new into product development, they forget about it and they don't realize that if you don't have compliance test done on your product, there's a very good chance you can't sell that product in the target market. So it's very
Mm.
critical that you do some studies on that and understand what are the compliance requirements for your product in that target market. Let's say you're trying to sell it in US. Well, do you have to do UL testing or not? Do you have to do FCC testing or not? And what are the costs involved? Because that's one of the things that they forget about it. They don't do the compliance testing thinking, and then they don't realize how expensive it is until the time comes that they find out, do I have to do FCC testing? Really? What? $5,000? That's a lot.
Mm.
So, I mean, it really catches them by surprise. We've had this over and over with some of the customers that are entrepreneurs and it's their first product ever taking it to the market. And they get pretty much shocked by the cost of the compliance. So I think it's very important that you think about what markets you're going to be selling, especially if you're thinking about selling it wide. Definitely is going to be expensive to do these compliance tests. Maybe you start from one country first and then, get some cash or earnings from that, and then start going towards the global compliance. You probably don't want to go global compliance right at the beginning when you have a brand new product and you don't even know how it's going to sell in the market.
You gave a good example there of, say an entrepreneur that they're bringing their first product to market. You must have encountered times when somebody's got a product and they've probably gone most of the way through new product development. They've done prototyping, they've done testing, and then they get towards, time when they would hopefully be starting to press the button on manufacturing it. And they're like, oh, hang on a minute. I'm not sure about compliance. Do the research, find out that they need to do a specific kind of compliance testing. Uh-oh, that could be quite expensive. And then if the product fails, they've got to then go back and do a redesign of the product. And I mean, you're talking about big expense there, aren't you?
Oh, not only big expense, but missed market, in terms of if they were trying to hit the market at a certain point and compete with the competitors, or
Oh,
for
yeah.
example, they have a product that is supposed to be just in time for Christmas, and all of a sudden this happened, and now Christmas passed, and what are they going
Mm.
to do? They're going to wait till next Christmas. So a lot of these kind of things happen. We have also customers that don't even think about reliability. And when they think about reliability, they think just like one test. And they think, oh, well, we'll just do this and that's enough. I don't have money to spend for the rest of the test. But what they don't realize is that reliability is really taken into account not only the performance of the product in the field, but also environmental aspects of effect of the environment on that product during the use in the field. So all of these things, I think that there was the famous case study when they used it in up north America, it was working fine. But then when they sold the same product in Florida and hot states, you had major failures. Yeah, it was the
Yeah.
refrigerator.
Is it? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think you mentioned this ages ago in something else that we wrote or spoke about, but it's a really good example of that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think when we're going back to regulatory compliance, I think it's very, very important that, and the way we work, let's say the way we work with our customers is that right up front, we kind of may help them plan the whole thing. And that's really, really where we add value to them because half the time they don't
Yes.
know they have to do certain kind of testing, including compliance. And we give them a ballpark estimate for their product right away. Yes, maybe later on it will be $100, $200 more or less, but at least they budget for it ahead of time. And that's one of the key value that we bring to our customers in terms of the way we do the planning for them, free of charge. We basically ask some questions, meet with them, understand their product, and then we do the planning for them.
So that brings us to number 10. And this one is life cycle of the product costs.
I think the life cycle cost is important because let's say you have a product that you spend 6 months to develop, as opposed to your competitor who did it in a month. And I'm just exaggerating. Well, that competitor saved 5 months of development cost. And the development cost is huge. You got labor, you got design, you got parts, you got all these elements of the whole development that is daily accumulating for 5 months more than your competitor. So I think when we're talking about life cycle, we're talking about really the schedules. We're talking about how long will it take to build this product in an efficient manner. So of course, when it comes to, life cycle costs, you have minimum schedule time that basically is you go less than that, you're going to have to cut costs in quality and reliability or cut corners on quality and reliability. And nobody wants to do that. But then if you start losing, basically elongating the time, that means that somebody didn't do something right. For example, there was material and component planning wasn't done right. And because of that, parts arrived late. And because of that, basically, whole design team had to just wait until the part comes in, for example, in order to be able to. And then, most of the time, life cycle cost, it has to do with design and development life cycle. But then you could also kind of talk about manufacturing life cycle. For example, if you had, if you didn't have very knowledgeable materials handling team, and they didn't order the product on time for full production. So here it is, the product is design is done, frozen, and it's ready for mass production, but the materials are not there yet, or they're not going to be there for another month. You just lost a month of time. And if you calculate how much that impact is on, getting to market is huge. How much money you could have made in that month being early to the market that you just lost. How many customers they were waiting to get your product that are not disappointed. And so the impact of the life cycle cost is not just on the development side of things, which most of the time is on the development, but it can also impact the manufacturing as well.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned earlier, what happens if you don't make Christmas when you're banking on getting the product out for Christmas? I mean,
Right.
that's just a disaster.
Right, right. And then there's other elements talking about designing for repair and repairability, designing for maintenance, and then of course planning for end of life and of the product. All of these are important, and recyclability of the product, because if it's not environmentally sound product, maybe nobody will buy it, right? So you need to think about all of these factors. And yeah, I know for our new listeners and young entrepreneurs, these are a lot to handle. These are a lot to chew on. But I think at least we give them, the rough idea of what they are going to, or the road ahead, for their product development, as opposed to some other manufacturer who doesn't have any clues, or they don't want, because they don't want to deal with all the responsibility of explaining and having someone in house who is knowledgeable to explain to them.
You might be listening to this thinking, well, I don't know a lot about regulatory compliance, or I don't know a lot about design for manufacturability or reliability testing. And nobody's expecting everyone to be an expert. I mean, probably you've got large enterprises where they might have in-house manufacturing experts, and in that case, great. But it is a bit of a minefield, isn't it? Because if you're thinking, well, I want to get my products manufactured in, say, China, which is, of course, where Agillion, our contract manufacturer, is based, which you're talking about, or India, Vietnam, wherever. But I'm really not sure if I'm going to get the right advice. I don't know if my manufacturer is capable. Is it all on me? And that's going to be a big headache, isn't it? So it's good to know that, it is possible to find manufacturers out there that are able to give you that information, that advice that you need.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because what makes us different is that not only we understand different types of products that are out there, consumer products or electronic products. I mean, we build all kinds of products, right? From robots to consumer electronics and more. And the
Yeah.
point is, when our customers come to us, first thing we do, we understand what the product is and capabilities, performance, use case. And then we try to understand our customers' requirement. What is it that they want? They want this product to have, for example, 2-year life, 10-year life, certain kind of a return rate, estimation, targets, and so forth. And then a lot of times when they don't have any clues in terms of reliability testing or quality or regulatory compliance, because of the fact that we have a lab, or SQ labs, we have not only reliability testing capabilities, but also we have regulatory compliance, basically consultancy. We have the knowledgeable people within our team that can actually help them with not only regulatory compliance needs, but also we can create reliability test cases as well as reliability test plans, which meets their particular product needs. For example, if it's something really simple, then we will create a simple reliability test plan that just mimics exact situation that could happen in the real world, and we tested for it, and we make sure that this product will not have any kind of a big returns. And similarly, if you have a complex product, then we will also be able to develop a comprehensive reliability test plan, so that will pretty much test for everything that is critical to the reliability of that product. And because we have these capabilities, this makes us more understanding of our customers' need, and therefore we are able to help them much better. And we have seen customers go to another competitor, and the competitor never ever speaks about reliability or testing or compliance, and they don't know anything about it until they're about to launch the product, and all of a sudden somebody tells them, "Oh, you didn't do compliance," and they say, "No, my manufacturer didn't say." And manufacturer says to them, "It's not our responsibility. You should do your own research, and you should find out whether you need it or not. You brought us a product to manufacture, and we manufactured for you." You see, that's how they do it, but we don't do it that way. We realize that our customers are not, let's say, totally knowledgeable about everything that their product needs. And we definitely consult, and we recommend what definitely is needed. With the complete transparency, facts, we might even pull some things from online and show them as a proof, or consult and have a meeting with a compliance test lab and reputable test lab. Basically, ask in that meeting, let our customers know what is required or not. So all of these really makes us very helpful.
Yeah, in comparison, and you mentioned competitors, I mean, you're talking about other Chinese manufacturers there chiefly, I would say. And it's not all Chinese manufacturers, but probably more often than not, if you take them a product to manufacture, I would not guarantee that they're going to pay a lot of attention to, let's say, regulatory compliance, for example, not unless you very, very specifically tell them exactly what needs to happen.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's a huge risk for our customers. And that's why, in fact, speaking of risk, that's another thing we do. We do risk assessment on our customer product, DFMEA and so on. And we make sure that their product is risk-free when it's going to production.
Right, great. Okay, well, that a lot of food for thought there. Good sort of summary of how we're handling things like regulatory compliance as well. And of course, a little bit earlier on, you spoke about the costs of not handling it, which are, not worth thinking about. And I think that's why we've gone through these 10 points, because it's not about you being an expert in every single aspect of the design and manufacturing of your products, because you're going to be working with a manufacturer. Maybe they'll be helping to develop it and manufacturing it, or they're just manufacturing it. But if you've got the information you need to be asking the question, that's the key point here, because you need to be able to ask the questions to get the answers. If you're not even asking, how does your manufacturing partner or your product development partner know that that's an issue for you?
Exactly. I would say well put. I think that the 10 points that we just mentioned here are critical. These are just really minimal. These are the minimum 10 points that you must consider. There are probably a lot other points that you could think about, because the world is changing and there are new ideas and new requirements coming on almost all the time. But at least you need to think about, at the least, about these 10 points to be covered when you're designing your product, in terms of what the cost impact will be overall.
Excellent. Well, that's a brilliant way to finish it off, Andrew. Really enjoyed today. Helpful info, and I will be including some links to related topics and some blog posts and other things that we've done in the show notes. So if you want to go deeper, check out the show notes as well. So that's it, Andrew, this time. Thanks for joining me, and thanks for listening in to all the listeners too.
Thanks, Adrian. Until next time.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast, brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com, that's SOFEAST.com, to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share, because it will really help others discover us too.